So much equipment, Patty thought, closing the door behind her. Digital sensors on a series of monitors mounted behind her husband's bed displayed a multitude of numbers and graphs, signaling every slight change in Brian's blood pressure, oxygen levels, and respiratory rate. The movement of the electrocardiogram display up and down reassuringly indicated that his heartbeat was steady. Patty saw the clutter of monitors as a reflection of the enormous, hopeless efforts that were being made to prevent the inevitable. Her husband was in the last stages of a rapidly progressing incurable disease, and no amount of medical technology could keep him alive for long. She was relieved to find that he was awake and relatively awake, albeit a little weakened from the medications that barely contained his pain. There was a chair next to his hospital bed, and she pulled it closer, getting comfortable and taking his hand, which did not have an intravenous needle. The lighting was harsh, and the room was too cold, she thought. As in all hospitals, it smelled of disinfectants. "How are you feeling, honey?" "What is it?" she asked. "Are you comfortable?" The hospital bed was raised to support him up to the waist, and he forced a faint smile as she sat down next to him. Patty looked at the rapidly aging face of the man she had lived with for the last 20 years of her life, and her sympathy and sadness mixed with the resentment she had cherished for many years after learning that he had cheated on her with one of his colleagues. Although more than 5 years have passed since that family storm, the resentment and anger she felt then have not completely disappeared, only partially mitigated by her own attempt to restore inner balance through personal meetings with other people. She felt some satisfaction from reacting to the betrayal by trying to restore a sense of justice. "I feel better now, but this morning was terrible until they increased the dose of painkillers. It's been so hard for me lately," Brian said in a broken and weak voice. "I tried to call you last night, but I couldn't." "Have you been to Darren's?" "Yes, dear. I spent the night at his house," she replied, smiling softly. "We fell asleep late. I didn't see your message until this morning, so I figured we'd talk when I got there." Brian nodded thoughtfully, and there was a hint of jealousy in his voice. Patty often thought about how it all started. She has been a faithful wife for 15 years, abiding by their agreement of mutual honesty and devotion. But after catching Brian in the moments that caused her deep pain, she changed. It was a long and painful work on the relationship. He swore it was all in the past. She almost filed for divorce, but in the end she stayed, believing that she could start all over again. However, it was impossible to completely forget. She decided that she could be honest in return and speak openly about her feelings and actions. It became a new stage of their marriage. Gradually, their marriage took on a different form, in which honesty played a major role. They agreed not to keep secrets from each other anymore. And although such conversations were painful, they helped both to keep in touch and trust as much as possible. The affair with Miguel stopped after a few weeks. In the end, after they had spent several eventful days together, they had nothing to talk about. Their meetings became boring. One Saturday afternoon, she was waiting for the car to be washed, and a young man sat down next to her in the waiting room. He paid attention to her. She met his gaze. She liked his shoulder-length silky hair, the sparkle in his eyes, and his athletic build. Her next boyfriend was a wealthy man named Christopher. His apartment smelled of incense. Every day before meditation, he lit a sandalwood stick. They had a glass of wine and spent their evenings in a warm atmosphere, hugging, talking, and enjoying socializing. Christopher was caring and empathetic, but rather silent. And he had a girlfriend who ended their relationship in the end. After him was Jordan, then Nick, with whom she felt an emotional connection. She's had a lot of fleeting relationships over the past 5 years, and she stopped counting them over time. Since the beginning of her dates with Miguel, she often told her husband, as promised, about what was happening, although he did not always want to hear it. However, he also sometimes indulged in light flirting or meetings with other women. About a year ago, Brian started having health problems. He got tired, complained of pain, and eventually went to the doctor. The diagnosis turned out to be difficult. The operation did not help, and it became clear that the treatment would no longer help. The goal was pain relief. Patty tried to take care of him, doing everything possible to make him comfortable. She tried not to leave him alone for long, so she met people in the house without leaving him for long. He knew about it and generally didn't mind. Sometimes they just talked. Sometimes she shared her thoughts, but he didn't always want to listen. One day he asked her, "Do you see 2 men at once?" "Yes," she said. "It's only for a while you're in the hospital. I miss communication and warmth." "I didn't know," he replied in surprise. She tried to explain to him that she felt better when she was distracted from her sad thoughts. He listened in silence, sometimes wincing in pain. His condition was getting worse. When he tried to say something, she leaned closer to hear. "Brian, repeat." "I didn't hear you," she said. He raised his head and, straining, whispered, "You're selfish." His head fell back onto the pillow. The monitor beeped alarmingly. Patty looked at the screen and saw a straight line. She heard the nurses running down the hall, but she had already risen from her chair. She headed for the exit, taking a last look. In the hallway, she heard, "He's gone," someone said.